podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hi, Jimmy here with some instant reaction to the news that Thomas Tuchel has reportedly agreed in principle to become the next full-time England manager, obviously after Gareth Southgate left and obviously with Lee Carsley in interim charge as of this moment in time. Just a few thoughts really. It's certainly an interesting one. I think the main thing that stands out about Tuchel is his personality. He can be quite abrasive, he can be quite abrupt, certainly with the German media of his time at Bayern. Also during his time at Dortmund, latterly, he does have a way of, he doesn't seem very football association, very sort of, yes man type. He seems more of a Capello than a Southgate in terms of his personality. And I'm not just saying that because obviously we know that Tuchel's not English. We'll get onto that very, very shortly. But he may be the kind of feisty, bit of a rogue, if you will. Somebody who's not afraid to speak his mind and tell the players and the Football Association, the nation, sort of what's what. When something's not good enough, he says it like it is, which I think it might well be that that's what is needed. I don't know. Or is it going to absolutely blow up the way that Bayern didn't blow up last season? We must remember that Bayern Munich were very, very good last year. Obviously got to third in the Bundesliga in the end. Stuttgart came ahead of them after an amazing season. Was it semis of the Champions League with a late Real Madrid flurry of goals at the Bernabeu? That's what Real Madrid do. He was close. He was, in that respect, he was, Bayern were better in their position last season in the league, dictated. Just that Leverkusen were unbelievable and Stuttgart were decent. More than decent, sorry, that there's a massive disservice with Undav and Jurassi up front. And anyway, I digress. I do think he's a good manager. I think his job at Chelsea, winning the Champions League, will be something that he can always hang his hat on and always look towards as, look at a job I did under very testing circumstances, not just because it's Chelsea, but also the pandemic at the time. Yeah, he's a really curious choice for me. There will be a section of England fans and English media that sadly will look to Tuchel as a German and we'll just see a German manager in charge of England. I'm not sure that's something that we should get too bothered about. Like, I absolutely accept there will be a certain generation or a certain mentality of people that will not like that. But say, for example, if Jurgen Klopp had agreed to become England manager, I don't think there would have been anything like... I don't think there would have been any issues, personally. He's also pretty German. Obviously, England have looked towards Pep Guardiola. They've gone towards the big name appointments. Again, a bit like with Capello. And they basically went out and got the highest profile manager they could find that was available on the market at the time. And, he did a very good job, Capello, in the 2010 World Cup qualifying. We won't talk about the World Cup itself. And of course, we shouldn't forget that Capello did qualifiers, I think, for the Euros in 2012 before it all went a bit wrong. And we ended up with Hodgson. But it seems a massive diversion from Southgate, from even having the kind of personality Carsley is as interim manager. I honestly thought that we'd go down the English FA sort of knows the FA kind of system, the way that Scaloni at Argentina, Luis de la Fuente in Spain, and it seems to be the way to the trend is now to hire managers internally that know the FA system. And Thomas Tuchel obviously knows England. I believe he still has his house in London from when he was Chelsea manager. I believe he was very settled at Chelsea. He was very happy in England, which may well help sort of his temperament, potentially in press conferences or on the touchline. But if going forward, if Thomas Tuchel's the man we want us to, first of all, first thing is if indeed he is going to be in charge for the November Nations League games. I'm not sure he will. But if he is, the first priority is to get us back into League A. That involves a very, very tough task at Oaxaca, away in Greece, in the Athens Olympic Stadium, Oaxaca. and obviously Ireland at home, which, you never quite know what the Irish will bring up at Wembley. His main aim is to get us the World Cup in 2026, of course, is to just get us there, but to go bloody far and win it with a squad that I don't think is capable of winning it at this moment in time. But then we don't know who's going to be, at the pinnacle of English international football in 2 years' time. So it's very early to call that. I feel this is a move as well that's been sort of driven by what, funnily enough, the USA have done. Obviously, the US, whilst they're starting from a lower plinth than England internationally, they've got ideas about performing phenomenally in their home, joint host, the home World Cup. They go out and get Mauricio Pochettino. They don't hire a guy from inside the US Soccer Federation, the way that Greg Berhalter kind of was, or Bruce Arena, or, another American. They went with Jurgen Klinsmann not so long back, and that didn't work out wonderfully. They went out and got probably the highest profile manager they could realistically attain, and that was Mauricio Pochettino. I think England have looked at that and gone, well, if that's what America are doing, then not that we want to just follow what America does in everything we do, and Christ knows we probably do, but some of them have gone, well, we don't have to necessarily just go English. We don't have to go with somebody internally. I do think there is a massive risk in that. I think when you look at the actual nations that are winning things, Argentina, Spain, who are hiring internally, and the manager is just a facilitator for the very best players you've got. You don't need to be a genius to manage the very best players. It's, like with any sport, club sides, you're not always going to be able to go out there and get the best players. Okay, if you're Man City, you can. If you're Real Madrid, you can. But international football, you have got the very best players available to you in your country. And if you're England, if you're Spain, if you're France, if you're Germany, if you're Italy, whoever, you don't need to coach these players more than just let them play the way they have expressed themselves to their clubs and the way that they play. Let them be talents, let them be brilliant, because that's what's got them to the level they're at in the first place. Do I think Tuchel will do that? I think he'd be very organised. I think he'll be a little more attacking than Southgate was. I think he'll be a bit more organised defensively. I think that's just his way. It's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see. He's going to keep us tight, but it's with those goals in this English team without Harry Kane. Let's not forget that Kane didn't play against Greece. We relied on a Bellingham, a bit of a long-range effort that sort of squirmed through Vlachodimos in the end to go in. And even then, we still lost the game. Like with any appointment, it remains to be seen. Do I get excited by this? I wouldn't say I'm excited. It's not like we've gone out and got Pep. I'm sure we'll go on to the Cave Solokol 6-week manager thing, go to the World Cup. But, Jesus Christ, can we talk about that in the next podcast, by the way? That was a bit weird. It's not like, obviously, Klopp, I think he's going to be German manager one day. He obviously just got a job at Red Bull starting in January, so he's not available, and I don't think he'd want the job. I think if you're going to go then, who else is realistically available, whether under contract or not? Tuchel's probably about as high profile in terms of they're available, they're willing, they would want this job at this stage of their career. He's obviously managed Mainz, Dortmund, PSG, Chelsea, Bayern Munich. He's worked his way up the footballing ladder in clubs, and an international job does feel like a good fit for him. Whether it's England, again, remains to be seen. It'd be very interesting to see. But on the point of winning the World Cup, if we've got to qualify, obviously, no foreign manager has won a World Cup, and by that I mean, in case I need to explain, no manager has managed a foreign nation to their own to a World Cup title. The only time in Euros history was Otto Rehhagel with Greece. Obviously, he was German. He is German. He's still with us, thankfully, in 2004. And I think there was Marcelo Bielsa in charge, and possibly Jorge Sampaoli in charge of Chile, Argentinians, when Chile won the back-to-back Copa America. So in terms of the big major international trophies, and just respect to AFCON, Asian Cup, etc., there isn't really much history of foreign managers winning World Cups and winning. In fact, there's no history of foreign managers winning World Cups. Every single manager who's won a World Cup has been with their own country. So it's a curious one from that point, but I guess he'll want to go in there and prove that a foreign manager can win a World Cup with a nation that's not their own. And that's, one day it will happen. hopefully for us, it'll be Tuchel with England in light of this appointment. But am I convinced? No. Do I think it's going to end in some kind of major blow up? Probably. I feel like he's just not very FA. It feels like the alternative timeline than if England had hired Brian Clough. As good a manager as he is, there's still a certain kind of expectation of how you carry yourself as England manager. And if you don't get that, if you don't carry yourself that way, it can, as we've seen with, when Capello walked out and, Keegan walked out in the end of the press conference. And let's not go into other managers who may have said or acted in controversial ways in the past. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a bit abrasive. He's going to end up rubbing some players the wrong way, I feel. I hope not. I hope he comes in, is calm, does a solid job, gets the very best out of the talented, very, very talented individuals we have in England, and also looks towards U21s and works with Carsley in developing the younger players to come through.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
I hope that's what happens. And I hope this isn't just because he wants to keep his house in England and come back to England and just fancies a 2-year jolly managing England team. Because this is a job that, whilst it isn't, a week in, week out, being an international manager at any nation, whether it's England or blooming, Turks and Caicos Islands with a 14-year-old student in goal. What a story that is, by the way. International management is intense because you're managing the nation and your reputation of the nation, the eyes of the nation are on you when you play. Even though you're not managing week in, week out like a club, you are when it's your turn to step up with international periods during the season, whether it's qualifiers, whether it's a major tournament, the eyes are on you. And that isn't something that Tuchel's necessarily had before, in that the nation, he's had the pressure of Bayern. Obviously, Bayern are a juggernaut of a club. Just go back and see how he was with the German media when he's Bayern manager. There were so many instances of him being very, very short with them, very funny with them. There's a reason why he, in the end, just didn't last there. And it wasn't just performance on the pitch, it was his face didn't fit. And yeah, he won the Bundesliga. That was Dortmund messing up against Mainz on the last day of the season, the year before last. But as soon as he came up against a team that wasn't going to bottle it, he couldn't cope with it. Like I say, I'm torn. I hope he does brilliantly. I hope he gives us what we want and what we've craved for decades. Just fear they've gone down the big name route rather than the logical appointments. Who do I think that would have been Carsley? Not necessarily. But, and you can say, but who? Well, maybe that's why they've gone to this appointment, because there's been 3 months since Southgate walked away and the FA needed to appoint someone sooner rather than later, with World Cup qualifying potentially on the horizon. Anyway, I've gone on for long enough. Please let us know your thoughts at It's Only Your Game on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Please send in your voice notes as well. We will get them out on our podcast feed. Just remember as well that whether England go on to promote out of Nations League B, whether they go on to win the World Cup, whether it ends up being an absolute unmitigated disaster under Thomas Tuchel, boys and girls, it is indeed only a game.